Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another Friday here at the American Red Cross. I'm Sava Poliviyama, your Disaster Workforce Engagement Manager for the Louisiana region, here to talk about all things volunteer leadership and give you awareness of some of the skills that we want to be working on and the tools available out there to help you succeed as you begin to connect with other volunteers, sharing the mission, and sharing the same vision moving forward and how we're all going to get there together. Uh, just like before, we'll start off with some situational awareness about what's going on in the field, how we're supporting one another across the region, and then I am joined together by guest speaker Yuvraj Bueller, our volunteer connection guru, subject matter expert, and lead, here to talk about some of the tools that are there for you in volunteer connection. Before we get to him, though, let's get into some of our mission moments. Uh, this past week, we did an engagement check-in and discussion with all of our leaders across each chapter. And I want to give a very special shout out to the full North Chapter leadership team. Whether you're staff or volunteer, they're showing great strides into doing everything to improve the experience of the volunteers, both with communication, leadership, direction, and opportunities just to connect and build camaraderie. When we looked at our engagement scores for the North Chapter, one out of our 52,000 hours that were captured, they contributed to 16,159. And while that looks small, it's really important to note that the number of volunteers that make up the North Chapter is only about 25% of our workforce, but their contribution was over 31% of our hours, showcasing that they're putting their relationships into action and mobilizing their volunteers to go out in the field. Beyond that, their volunteer satisfaction score was exceptionally high at 94.4%, with a net promoter score of 50. So that means that while there's opportunities for improvement, volunteers identifying, oh, I would like, X, Y, or Z to be a little bit better, they're still predominantly excited and happy with the direction that they see the North Chapter moving in. For those of you and your awareness, our net promoter score are how many, when surveying 100 volunteers, how many people are saying, yes, I'm going to go and tell my friends and family to come join in the organization, use their services, and they're spreading the message of that organization. Anything above a 20 is good. Anything 50 and above is miraculous. It's great. So the North having a net promoter score of 50 is outstanding. So I want to give a huge shout out to the full chapter. There's not just one person that I could designate individually. This is a collaborative approach among all of them. So this week's shout out goes to the entirety of the North chapter. To go down into our other metrics, we want to look at the heartbeat of our mission, the volunteers that make up everything that we do here. We are showcasing about 368 of our 539 volunteers are engaged. So staying into that 69-70% of our workforce are staying engaged, which is an amazing approach. We want to stay above the 66% line, try to stay actually at the 80%. So this is good. We have room for improvement, ways that we can connect with our volunteers even more. But one thing that we are tracking is how much our volunteer footprint is growing. Since last week we had 532 volunteers. And this week we have 539. So in the past week, we've had a growth of 7 new volunteers somewhere in our region over the space of Louisiana. We're having people join. And I'm actually really excited to share that one of those 7 is with the DWE team, Sheena Thomas, who is joining to support Brenda in training. Brenda currently has her ongoing some tutelage and excited to help with making sure people get their creds every time they take a Red Cross training. And we are steadily moving forward on our hours progression. We've had a 1% bump from last week to this week. We did identify that we've had about 50 events that we have organized and hosted since January that still have their attendance that needs to be tracked. So there's an opportunity that we've actually done a lot more work that's just not being reflected in our hours at this moment. At this current time, our workforce leaders are going back to those events, tracking and updating attendance. I know that some of that has already been completed, but more to come. So we're moving in the right direction. There will be even more when we do this Hot Topics next week. And then this is May. We're still focused on our operational readiness and focusing on how we can improve our feeding programs. This last week, we were going to have a large-scale feeding academy. Unfortunately, there was a lot. We've been working on getting some feeding camps in each one of the chapters that have had steady involvement, but we did not get the interest that we wanted for the Feeding Academy, unfortunately. And also, we identified that there are some updates that are coming with the national feeding programs that are going to be released in June. So we have broken down the Feeding Academy, and instead of offering that back on May 20th, as you're seeing here on the screen for Wednesday, we're going to break that up into different offerings into the month of June. Mustafa Alami, our mass care program manager, has gotten certified to teach disaster supervision fundamentals, and we'll be offering that in June 10th, and then June 11th, we are having our mass care meeting that they host on the second Thursday of every month. And they are going to be talking about the updates that have come with the feeding program. So if you are someone that's interested in how we can provide food during times of a crisis, please be sure to take those opportunities. And then, of course, the Feeding Academies this month still have Feeding Fundamentals. It is also available on online web-based training. And then our Mass Care Regional Program Lead is still thinking about offering the kitchen site management class. It is also available on an online web-based training, but just to make sure that there's multiple avenues that you can get that information, Wesley Brownlee is looking to offer that as well if there are volunteers that are interested. So it is still an opportunity for growth. We've had one volunteer get credentialed to help with our readiness. So we've had a one person increase from 279 of last week to 280 of this week. Always remember, these numbers mean that there are people at play working to help protect our community. So while we can showcase this in numbers, it is true people that are helping make all of this work. So with that being the current state of affairs, let me introduce to you one of my favorite people, someone that is actually a Red Cross prodigy that has been with us. You may have heard his voice before. Every time we've had a disaster, he's been working behind the scenes, virtually helping in the workforce unit, and is now a nationally recognized workforce leader on multiple DROs, constantly called upon to help be a assistant director of workforce, if not a staffing manager in some way, shape, or form. I want to introduce you a good friend of mine, Yuvraj Bueller. Yuvraj, please tell the good people who you are and what are you here to share with them today. And you can go ahead and take over at this point.
I don't know what to say other than Sava, I will send you the paycheck for all of the nice things you said about me. So appreciate that. Super excited to be here, everyone. Thank you all so much for giving me a portion of your Friday afternoon so we can deep dive and look into Volunteer Connection together and do a quick health check. So today we're just doing a 15-minute reset on Volunteer Connection to make sure we're all using it to its full potential. Whether you've been using the tool for a couple years now or you're relatively new, there's always something to sharpen. And so we'll cover what supervisors do in the system, how hours work, and some tools you may not be using yet. And we'll end with a live demo on ending positions along with adding activity notes to a profile. So we'll jump into it. So just a very basic and rudimentary slide here, but I want to make sure that all of us on the call are on the same page about what Volunteer Connection is. So Volunteer Connection is not just a database where volunteer profiles are stored. It is a full volunteer management system. It's where the initial volunteer submits their application to become a volunteer. It's where volunteers will apply for opportunities, get placed. So volunteer services teams are moving applicants over to us. It's where we as a department are able to approve opportunities. Volunteers are able to access their volunteer profile, log hours, able to access Edge as a quick link, the resource library, the IT service desk, and stay connected to us as well. And something we'll talk about later on in the presentation is the organization manager tool, a great repository of information and partnerships within the tool. So, as supervisors, we all have specific and active roles in Volunteer Connection. So, talking about first the screening and placement section, when a volunteer applies and they are referred over by volunteer services over to you, they'll pop up in your opportunity queue. We want to be good custodians of the volunteer experience, and we want to approve or reject the referral within 7 days of receiving it. That is the crucial amount of time we have in order to capture the volunteer while they're still interested in volunteering with us and in that position. And missing that window, we usually have a harder time trying to engage those folks, and it creates problems downstream. Onboarding and training, once you approve a volunteer, you have a checklist queue to complete. That's your onboarding workflow in Volunteer Connection. And every time you approve a volunteer in Volunteer Connection, automatically a checklist queue is generated with 4 of the basic steps that each volunteer in the organization should go through as they are progressing on in their onboarding. Developing and empowering, this is where the relationship lives. So managing your rosters, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, running reports, documenting interactions, understanding the volunteers' roles and what their motivation to volunteer is, having an understanding of their skill set and any opportunities that you can provide to them to empower them. Managing hours and events, if you don't mark attendance for volunteers via the shift tool, they won't get credited for hours in their profiles. And we want to make sure that they do receive that so we're able to properly recognize them when they hit those hours milestones. And also, they'll pop up on a list that Sava sends out, the engagement indicators report showing no activity. So we want to make sure we're able to rectify that. And there's a couple different ways to approve hours via the hours manager or within the group share. You can approve them in bulk or individually as well. And touching on the recognition piece as well, there are several reports in Volunteer Connection. Some great ones are birthday reports that you can pull for your volunteers in the group share to recognize them on their birthdays if appropriate, email templates, along with great volunteer leadership development plans and onboarding plans as well. You can reference on OneSource to recognize and retain your volunteers. One of the reports that I wanted to highlight on today's call was the engagement indicators report. And I think this comes at a fitting time as we prepare to head on into the new fiscal year. And so this is a report that, we want every supervisor to be running at least monthly. And it is pretty easy to pull when you go into your respective groups. And I have the instructions listed right here on the left-hand side of the screen. So you just go to your My Groups, select on the group share that you want to go to. You'll just run the report with a set date range, and you can download the report as an Excel file. That's much more easier to manipulate. And this report's going to tell you everyone who's on your roster, who's been active. It looks at 4 key engagement indicators. It takes a look at hours logged in that position, training completed, so that looks at the edge, right? Any training completed in edge, BRO activity, any shifts attended. So if someone is showing that they haven't had engagement in quite a bit of time, that is a great indicator to us to attempt to re-engage the volunteer. Or if we're saying, oh, they haven't logged hours in a while, but I know they attended an event last week. That's also a great opportunity for us to make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable and marking attendance. And also, it's also great to keep your roster up to date. If you're like, oh, John Doe is no longer going to be part of the Red Cross. He's resigning and moving abroad, right? That's a great opportunity to also, end date that position. And an engagement indicator helps you make those connections. And it makes sure that you're never surprised when you're having conversations with the DWE teams in your chapter meetings or with volunteer services. You're ahead of the game. So let's talk about what gets logged automatically versus what volunteers must enter. And this is one of the most common questions that I know all of you get from volunteers is, where are my hours? And the answer almost always comes down to this. Was it automatic or did they need to log it manually? And so wanted to touch base about this. DRO hours, these are automatically credited to the volunteer whenever they are assigned to a DR. So there's no expectation of them that they have to log it in manually. For RC response and for dad and duty officer work, there is a nightly fee that comes in. So those hours are also credited, and we'll talk more responses here in a second. Shift tool hours are automatic when you mark attendance on an event and volunteer connection, and edge training posts automatically to the profile after the overage occurs the next day. Everything else, so direct service, meetings, calls, travel, team building, the volunteer logs it themselves, and you as supervisor will approve it. On call is separate from worked, and they can't double count. Uh, Another piece of when you're having conversations with volunteers is making sure that if they logged it as on call or worked as well. So talking more about hours, and I know I would mention a little bit about the RC respond. um, So just a quick note on that. RC Respond, it rounds hours. So it rounds to the nearest hour unless the volunteer hits a 15-minute mark. So 1 hour and 12 minutes logs as 1 hour, but 1 hour and 15 minutes logs as an hour and 15. Manual entries can be in any increments. Um, if a volunteer logs them, right? So as we know, a volunteer connection, an hour, 15, 30, 45. Um, and, when a volunteer is manually logging, log out at 40 hours per entry. How we highly encourage volunteers to log hours for mission activities, admin work, like I mentioned earlier, and travel time as well. But, please ask that your volunteers, they don't log, duplicative hours like DRO respond activity as well. And the deadline that we tell all folks is to that you are approving all volunteer hours by the 7th of the following month or the Friday prior if the 7th falls on a weekend. Now I get to talk about one of our favorite and most underutilized tools here in Volunteer Connection, the Organization Manager. This one might be new to some of you on the call. If your volunteers come from partner organizations, Southern Baptist, FEMA Corps, or local nonprofits, it is a good chance that they may have came in through hearing about the Red Cross. A recruiter may have spoken to them, or one of you may have gone and gave them a QR code, right? Scan this QR code to come and join us. And so they came in through a unique entry point link that associated them in Volunteer Connection. With that, and it's super important for us as we are out in the field establishing partnerships and bringing volunteers on from different organizations that we are tracking that in the system as well. Who is the relationship manager for that? Because all of us are working through many different sorts of places and things. So it is helpful for that as well. We're able to create organizations. We're able to provide it to like a pastor, right? And, ask them to encourage their congregation to fill out an application. We're able to see that live in the system. Because I know sometimes if a volunteer just goes directly into, redcross.org and applies, we're not able to, necessarily associate, oh, that person came in from XYZ, nonprofit or XYZ church. But when they come in through organization manager, we're able to very clearly and distinctly tell that this person is coming from there as well. And it's also great to document any information, notes about that partnership, what that looks like, that organization, an organization manager, any activities that are happening, like any meetings, follow up with the organization. And so it is great that it's stored in all one place. So all of the folks who are organization admins, they are able to see that as well. And if you do not have access to organization manager, connect with the local volunteer services team to obtain access to that if that meets your need and if it is appropriate, because it is a great tool to track organizations and to show what we have established. And if we have anything already established, you won't have to establish a new one. It will already be in there. And we also have national partnerships as well, and those are very clearly defined as well in the organization manager tool. Any questions up until this point? I know we've talked about a lot of different things so far. Alrighty, hearing none, I will just charge forward. The next thing that I wanted to touch on was documenting your touch points. Activity notes on profiles. So again, another underused feature in volunteer connection and one of the most important for relationship management. Activity notes on a volunteer's member profile are where you document meaningful touch points, right? Like a re-engagement call, a birthday check-in, maybe a missed shift, follow-up, a coaching conversation. And it helps define engagement as, volunteer connection helps define engagement as a relationship plus action. We're able to tell a holistic view of the volunteer by able to see all of those notes, and it aids a lot, especially if you have other team members assisting you with re-engagement and engagement efforts in your respective areas. They're able to see a full scope and details of the interaction. Um, if a volunteer goes inactive and you need to make a case for why you kept trying, right? Let's just say they're showing up on the engagement indicators report. There would, no activity in a long time, right? Having that note on the profile makes a world of a difference because, if someone is going through, they'll be like, okay, yep, this person is going on a, long vacation to Europe. So this is why they're still on the roster. And we have an activity note here as well. And so I will quickly take over screen sharing to show how you can add an activity note in Volunteer Connection. Okay, so my screen should be visible and I am going to go ahead and demo that. So I am using Sava's profile here as an example. He has so graciously let me use it. And while I'm on his profile, I'm going to go ahead and click the activities fragment here. So while I'm on here, I'm able to see all of the activity notes that have been placed on his profile by all sorts of different administrators across time, all the way from 2017 to 2025. And I can view any comments that have been previously put on his profile, and I can edit any as well if appropriate. So I'm just going to go ahead and click Add New Activity. So if I am making an outreach attempt to Sava, that's going to be considered an outbound outreach. So I'm going to say I sent him a text message. So for a description, let's just say if he's on, he is a DWE. So if I did DWE re-engagement, and so I can put a very short interaction. It doesn't need to be a New York Times bestseller length of a comment, but just very short and sweet that tells what the, activity and the engagement was. So send text message to Sava. asking if he is still interested in training team member position. And I can put it to the line of service, a disaster cycle services, and the position he holds. And I can click submit. So pretty simple right there, and it will populate on his profile. And if I have to add additional information to the note, I can simply just click the edit icon and it will let me add additional notes as well. So we talked about adding activity notes. So I'll touch about the next piece here really quickly is some tools and resources and support. Some other things that I did want to highlight as well before we wrap up is in group shares that we all have set up for our respective areas, there's a great tool called account list email. So if you're a group share leader, you can send a mass email directly to your group share members right from Volunteer Connection. There's no external tool needed for that. For those of you with member administrator access, you have the ability to view additional details of a volunteer's profile. It also aids in when you're trying to end date position. So, for example, a trainee and being able to view the gaps that a volunteer may have on their profile. Just as a reminder, adding and end dating gaps is the responsibility of the DWE team. There's also a super helpful resource library on Volunteer Connection that is developed by the national headquarters team that goes through tutorials, how-to videos, and tip sheets that I highly encourage all of you to take a look at. And your volunteer services team are the subject matter experts on the tool. So when in doubt, feel free to reach out to them. And before I let you all go, I just want to do a very quick demo of how to end date a position in Volunteer Connection as well. So I still have the wonderful Sava's profile pulled up here, and I am going to go ahead and toggle to engagement information and positions. So as you can see here, Sava holds this DCS trainee community partnerships position. So I can click the edit icon under positions and I can put the end date for the position. And it is required that I put a reason for ending. So for example, if I, let's just say Sava, he resigned, he told me, hey, this, I don't have time anymore in my schedule. I can go ahead and put that along with a quick note as well. Receive text from Sava, doesn't have time anymore, starting starting new job or something like that. And I can click submit. And so what will happen is next time you run that engagement indicators report tomorrow, Sava will no longer show on your list. So you're doing roster cleanup at the same time and keeping the data in Volunteer Connection fresh and clean. And with that, that concludes everything that I had put together for today's call. Does anyone have any questions? And I know we're right at time.
So, you kind of mentioned this already, but for action items to practice the skills that you just discussed, Yuvraj, what is one thing that you recommend they try out this weekend to practice with the Volunteer Connection tools?
I would highly encourage everyone just to run a report of volunteer listing, with engagement indicators to see how it fares and what your engagement looks like in your respective areas. And click on the organization manager tool, see what it looks like and get yourself familiar with what the layout and structure looks like and what partnerships are already in place in the system.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yuvraj. That was our volunteer connection guru. Once again, thank you so much for being with us to talk about all things volunteer connection, show a case where we can get more information and how they can reach out to you. As you heard from Yuvraj, please go ahead and play around in volunteer connection. I swear to you, you can't break it. And if there's anything that something goes wrong, just let us know. We can pretty much fix anything that you do in Volunteer Connection, but you can't get better if you don't get your hands on there. Run a report, check out the tools, get a look at Organization Manager. And for hot topics next week, I highly encourage if you see someone doing a great job, if you're really excited about how someone is supervising a team, either you're their leader and they are managing a team for you that's going really well, or you are someone that has a supervisor that you think is treating you with great respect and that you love what they're doing and how they're doing it, send their information my way so I can highlight them at the next Hot Topics and showcase those experiences with the rest of the team. Uh, Finally, next week, our topic is going to be how do we support the busy volunteer? And we have a guest speaker, Chad Lazard, that's going to be with us to talk about supporting volunteers and all the different priorities that our volunteers have. How do we still support them, engage them, and find a way that they can make a impact at the micro level, at any sort of way that they can volunteer their time. Sometimes having the weekly shifts isn't going to be the right thing. Sometimes we can't give them a big project, but working collaboratively, creatively to find ways that we can engage all of our volunteers is still a way that we can push the mission of the Red Cross forward. So Chad is going to be talking about how we go about that and some best practices that he's picked up through the years. Once again, I'm Salva Palaviama, your Disaster Workforce Engagement Manager. Hope to see you next week, same time, same place, Friday at 2 p.m. Take care, everybody.